live to live night news. If you're a lot like me, then you might not like you. It's another episode of Hours of Clarity. Today we're going to talk about gratitude in recovery, and I got my two friends with me. I'm blessed to have a very good friendship, a long-time friendship since I've moved to Windsor, Ontario. Introduce yourself here.
So Chris T-Bear. Me and Matt are great friends. I run the Phoenix Recovery Program at the Downtown Mission, but I'm also a lifelong, patron of Brentwood here. I was in Brentwood when I was 16 years old, and I've been involved in this place my whole life, in and out of recovery homes, namely Brentwood mostly, until I got it.
And how
10
long?
years ago.
10 years ago. You've been 10 years sober.
I've been sober 10 years. My wife and I, on the previous podcast we spoke about this. My wife and I got sober together. We used together, so we've been together about 14 years, sober 10. We got married. We got our kids back from our previous relationship. Yeah. And we have two beautiful kids now.
And now you're a counselor.
Yeah.
You're running the Phoenix Recovery Program at the Mission. Who'd you bring with you?
So this is a good friend of mine, Tim. We met about a year ago. He's great. Just the work that he does complements my work, right? And it just gives me, he's older than I am, he's been doing this for a long time up in Ottawa, so it gives me, motivation to see somebody like Tim. He's just a good guy.
Want to introduce yourself, Tim?
Yeah, I'm Timothy Meisenheimer. I am fairly new to Windsor. I was here for a few months in 22, and then I came back in 24, and so I have a long history in recovery. I was very fortunate that I was very young when I started my recovery, around 25 and a half.
And how many years you got sobriety now?
I'll be 42 years.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah.
So that's something I aspire to be right there. Something to look forward to. And we need more people that represent a positive structure in stability and recovery. I remember you had mentioned something to me in our previous talk, just when I met you at the Mission, about somebody asking you, why don't you go on with your life? Why don't you get on with your life now? Isn't it about time that you move forward, kind of a question? And your response was?
Well, I'm still healing.
Right.
And, I was 40 and I figured out some things that weren't, really started around 25. And then at 40, some tragedies happened in my life. And through time, and then I started realizing I needed to program the sense of CODA and Al-Anon and a couple of those things and then I went on to a lot of grief recovery work. So
would you say that throughout recovery, you've learned to reach out and say, look for the answers and help, and finding the help that you need? Right. So it's like, without the recovery part of it, you would have never been able to handle these things. And that's probably a repetition for people that struggle in addiction. And especially, watching people come into program that you have to take on as a counselor, that you wish that window would stay open,
It's hard.
It's
hard. The window's hard because nowadays, especially because the drug climate has changed so much, right? And it's so easily accessible, right? So you got to catch them. That's why these peer support workers and stuff they're trying to implement in different communities are important, because my program, and a lot of recovery programs are sort of like incubators, right? So they get shielded off to the
safety
world. And for me, as a counselor, it's hard for me to connect to some of these guys when that window's open.
Right.
So you want to catch it right when it's in small now, because people aren't withdrawing like they used to, as much, is because the drugs are so readily available. That window is so small.
The withdrawal management or whatever they have, that program where it's like, the methadone, then they're now handing out Dilaudid or
Safe Supply, which is, listen, I'm all for stuff that's going to cause less deaths. Right, and the fentanyl's so strong nowadays, people are dying. So this is to keep people from not dying. But in that being said, it's a little bit tougher for agencies like myself to try to take this on. But we can, right? And you just got to catch them when they're in that mode. So in recovery mode, right?
Back to what Tim, you were mentioned that to me, that answer when you said I'm still recovering, I'm still healing, I have healing to do. To catch yourself like that, what do you think the tools were in your recovery that you learned throughout recovery, let's say?
Well, suffering woke up the need, right?
Right.
And I think I returned back a long time ago now. It's like 25 years ago, where I started to realize I needed to wake up every morning and say, help God.
Right.
And that's an easy, short prayer, but it's not so easy to be that vulnerable to say that really this is how this is going to change.
You do that on a daily basis?
Yeah. And so that's waking up. And then, so what I've learned by working, I worked 36 years with mostly this kind of a population on the street.
So homelessness, addiction.
Opened a drop-in Ottawa. Were involved in a drop-in back in Sudbury before I went to Ottawa.
Right.
Been involved with the population.
Was there a certain organization that you worked with up in Ottawa? or is it just a?
I founded one in '99 called Capital City Mission.
Okay.
The building's called the Drop-In now.
Right.
It has been. It's 25 years next March.
Okay.
And 7 years ago,
Well, good for you.
I transitioned because I thought had done street work all that time.
Right.
And so I went over to the institutional mission, the big mission. It's called Ottawa Mission.
Okay, so basically the same thing as a homeless shelter here.
Probably
Yeah.
in a bigger scale, I'd imagine,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's 230 beds, 21 beds
Wow.
plus that with
I'll check that out sometime.
many like the Life House is a 6-month program for,
Right.
and then in the mission we have
So that's
Sort of
in-house.
like ours program, sort of like Phoenix kind of, but it's like the same thing inside the mission though.
not the other one. Stabilization is inside the
Okay,
mission.
and then they go through.
And 3 kilometers away, the other
Oh.
place is for people to live for 6 months.
Are we just
Sort of
sir? I'm just kidding. So it's just like a major program to help
Yes.
people with transitional housing, maybe
Everything.
mental health, addiction,
Everything.
all of it. Okay, that's good.
School.
That's good.
Yeah, that's cool.
The
Yeah.
whole thing. It's a
Right.
big operation.
Right.
But the reality was, through all that, whether it was a drop-in center and the street work
Yeah.
or that experience, consistently I saw that, we get good at what we practice.
Right.
And so we practiced a lot of things, and we got good at them, and
Yeah.
they're killing us. But when we come out of our program, and you talked about how 20 years later,
Yeah.
why do you still feel whatever
The
30
need.
years later
Right.
to be a part of recovery and to realize that I'm still healing is because you just gotta, when we do our inventory, we say, well, what am I practicing here?
Right.
Am I practicing anything that's good for me? Or am I just dry? We used to call it dry drunk, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
angry, and
White
mad.
knuckling it.
Yeah, it's like you're still trying to be in control of the planet. You're still
Or in control of anything.
Everything.
That's the thing. The sense
Yeah.
of control. We had talked about this briefly in some of your counseling sessions, Chris.
Yeah.
The control, the need to hold on to something to feel
The
like
thing is, we keep going back to me, right?
Right.
Like I want this.
When
I
it's a
want
we.
that. And we don't realize, and that's when people get disconnected. And that's when I can get disconnected too.
Yeah.
Like as soon as I start thinking about myself, in my household, there's more than me.
right. You got your
Right?
kids,
There's
you got
more
your
than
wife.
myself in the household, and I can act like that and treat like people like that.
Yeah.
My wife especially, and I can act like I'm the only one in the household. When I take a step back and say, okay, what does Katie want?
Or what do the kids need?
What do the kids need? You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
it's not all about Chris, right?
Yeah.
And that starts with taking care of myself,
Right.
And then getting up in the morning too, and getting on my knees and humbling myself and saying, okay, what do I got to work on today?
And that was the thing too. I'm going to touch
After
base
10
on
years, you know?
touch base on that because you said you recommit to God or your higher power or something bigger than
That's
us,
what
right?
they do at Brentwood too. every morning.
And the thing is this, right? It's recommended now. They don't direct,
Yeah,
right? Which
yeah.
I understand. You know what I mean? The
Yeah.
world's changing. Da, 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 da. It's not.
Sure.
It's not like they can tell anybody what to do, right?
Yeah.
It's a government run facility. There's a board of directors that have a say in things, and then there's committees in which guide things, and then there's a program directive, right? So it's like more or less they're telling you the things that were done in previous years, just like you gentlemen are telling
Well,
the
Father
people.
Paul used to have
Right.
us do that a lot. But, and that's the thing too. When you get up, it humbles you and just makes you
Of course it
realize
does.
that you're not the sole
Just like making-
person on the planet.
king.
You know what I mean? Like you're not the king.
100%. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And just like making your bed sets off a positive chain of events. At least if you have a shitty day, you can
Yeah.
come home and you have an organized room.
Exactly.
Right. It gives you
And it's
po-
goals, right?
Right.
This time when I didn't relapse this time, and I did everything different.
Right.
And part of the things I did different was I set goals.
Right.
You know, and people say one day at a time, and that's good. But then when and when I get up in that morning, I want to make sure that I do hit my one day at a time goal. So I want to make sure that I get things done. And
Right.
it just adds up and adds up and adds up till I get to my ultimate goal and I achieve that.
So
right?
I want to ask Tim here. What were you addicted to? Like, what was the drug of choice? Or
was drugs.
It was drugs, right? Okay, so hard drugs,
Not really.
but regardless,
That was the 70s, right?
right?
So I mean, I partially my recovery could have been helped by
Right.
some of my buddies that went hard that way,
Right.
and either were passing or
Yeah.
incarcerated already. And I was a parent at 18 years old, and
That's hard.
Stress.
and all that stuff. I didn't want to be that guy, but I mean, it took years. And actually, to tell you the truth, when talking about gratitude, I
Yeah.
mean, it sounds backwards, but in 1980. My brother died on Christmas Day.
Oh,
and
my
I know it's
goodness.
close to Christmas when we're doing this. But
Yeah.
that's 44 years ago.
Yeah.
And as it worked, and he was a saint and is a good guy. He's just a juvenile diabetic, and
He
he's
passed from that. Yeah, we remember talking about this.
passed away from that, right?
Right.
But that was one of then about 3 other events between 20 and 25 that really brought me to a place where, like, man, like I'm not going to be able to be around for my kids. I'm
Right.
not going to be around. So I had to, have these moments of reason in your head that are actually good reasons. And but now I really I've tried to work. I have a program that I run. It's called Response.
Yep.
And I hand it out to whoever wants to have it. And we look at 12 practices that are spiritual practices that give you hope in recovery.
Okay.
So like meditation, journaling.
So it's sort of like 12 steps.
Sort of a response to help us with every step.
Right.
But for in this world now,
does Response have an acronym, or is it
recovery education, spiritual practices that encourage hope?
Okay.
Oh, wow.
I like that.
Yeah.
So what we do is so I started it because so many times in doing a stabilization group once a week, what we call hope group.
Mm-hmm.
That's people are full-on users if they want to be there.
Yeah.
It's
an open meeting kind of thing.
Yeah, open meeting, no program, nothing, right?
You should call it a hoping meeting.
Yeah. So I had to do 3 different groups, and 2 every week, but once a month, 3.
Yeah.
One week.
Yeah.
And really found that talking to people about that gave them some practices they could do. So if you practice something that helps you physically, it helps you something, so that could be dieting, or it could be going to the gym, or it could be whatever.
Right.
But if anything like that has some kind of, like we say, stay in this day, stay in the now, anything like that. So some people like to learn it and meditate, so we'll do some workshops with them on meditating, doing things like, one of the best things that I found when we're saying about the idea that people don't want really maybe a God-centered thing.
Right.
Well, I found a tool. It's called Virtues for Life, and it's all about reading all these, like one word. It drops down and it says, you guys can look it up. It says what the definition of the virtue is and what it transcends.
Okay.
And so just like patience. Let's take that.
Take that word.
Let's take that word. Well,
Which I have not have.
We don't have any, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So
Now.
how do we think the next time when the check's laid, or I'm waiting for me to pick you up, and
even the grocery store,
whatever.
I was going to say that
right?
grocery store. My wife used to get so mad at me.
We don't even know what the word means.
Now,
we don't know what the word means,
It's
and we don't know the benefit if we learn to practice it, that it transcends this.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Chaos.
And it's
okay?
practice.
Right.
It's practice, just like I tell my guys.
But we need more people that are an inspiration to other people that start things like this, different programs. Because, like, say back in the 70s, could you find 20?
Well, there's a lot more, but not even that. We go back 10 years ago.
28 days.
Even 10 years ago,
We go back 10 years ago, same thing, right?
That's right.
And now, when I was homeless, I say it all the time, and this goes to speak to the drug availability too.
Yeah.
Also, there's more services now.
Right.
Right. You can get drugs easier, now you can get services easier.
Right.
Before, when I used to, have to get up and Katie and I would go through Withdrawal until we hustled to get something together.
Right.
We also had to wait until 10:30 to get in the mission.
And let's just put it this
Like
way,
it wasn't open 24 hours a day. Like
where
it is
was
now,
the
right?
family at this point too, right? Like we used to hustle just to get our fix. Like that's the opposite of gratitude, right?
Yeah.
Like, and if people are wondering, like, when are they going to talk about gratitude? Gratitude is running a program for people. Gratitude's feeding the homeless. Gratitude's counseling people coming from addiction. Like, gratitude isn't a word; it's an action, right?
Well, it's all about
giving back.
It's about a new way of life,
right?
And it's about, but going back to like when you practice gratitude, when you practice something, it's just like a team sport. Everybody's got to be in on it together, and we practice these things, and we learn how to do them better with other people,
right.
And then we become better at it.
Right.
Like
sometimes
I was never taught stuff like this.
I look at, like, with teamwork, right? A weak link will break the chain, but in recovery, the weak link is the strongest link because we need to help the new person.
Exactly.
We need to help the newcomer be there for their suffering in order to receive, right? So in the giving, we receive, and these are all spiritual things. I never looked at it like that before. I used to think, like, I'm not getting on my knees for nobody.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need.
Yeah, well, that's all bullshit thinking.
It's crazy. It's nonsense.
Like, it's all bullshit thinking until you come to a kind of epiphany. Like I was in Brentwood so many times, right?
Yeah.
So many times over the years, just because I had a hard head and I never listened. I knew what to do, but I just wasn't hearing. Everything that followed.
There's a difference between
listened,
but not
I didn't
hearing.
hear. And I tell people that all the time because it's hard to break through that, and nobody can do it until you break through it. Like you're in this bubble, you're in a zone. You're in the addiction zone, right? The addict zone. You're in your and that's your behavior and that's your thought process and everything. Until you get out of that bubble and you really see what's going on around you, then you're not going to get better.
And to top it off too, right? Like I had a one-on-one yesterday, and just to kind of branch off of that, it's like choices. It really boils down to a choice. Like no one's going to tell me to stay sober,
Yeah, of course.
but if I choose to stay sober, nobody told me nothing. I'm doing it, right? So if I can make the choice every day to say, you know what, I'm just going to live this way. And I was breaking it down for a new guy here at Brentwood, right? Like, just choose not to do something negative, because you have a black and white choice and you have a rainbow of feelings. Like you said, you're still healing. 42 and some odd, right, days. Yeah, but
either
that,
so many people.
Either that,
but Tim helps so many people, and that's the key thing, right? He's just trying to help other people. That's what a lot of people don't get, and that's what.
But so do you, and so does every program.
We start to get reclusive, right? And we start to like back off, and then we become more independent. And independent is the opposite of what we're talking about.
Well, you get that bit of clarity. You get a little bit of recovery in you. You start gaining a few pounds. You feel healthy. You feel better about yourself. All of a sudden, you don't need the help anymore.
You got to include people. Independence is the opposite of that. So when we come independent, we start to be reclusive, and we start to back off and like get in our little shell. That's when things go haywire, right? Because that's what we're used to.
Right.
We're used to. I could be around 100 people, and it's just me.
Oh yeah.
I'm thinking about myself. You know. Now I don't do that. Now I think about the room. As opposed to me as a single entity, you know, and I think about everybody being included with me, you know, and that's the difference between now and then.
And you practice that.
I practice it, you know, and every day when I get up in the morning, you know. But then I can say to myself, this is where it messes me up, is I'm a counselor, right? So I can say to myself, it's okay because I counsel people. Right, and I don't go to meetings, and sometimes but then I got.
And that's you tricking yourself.
Then I got to get to me, and that's my alcohol, that's my disease on the right hand shoulder. Going, it's okay, but then I don't want to listen to the other part that knows that I should get to a meeting, because I can tell myself, you justify it and say, I'm good.
But who suffers from that too?
All these people, sorry to swear, all these people, right? I'm counseling everybody else, and that's how I'm getting my counseling.
Right.
It's not right.
It's not right.
Because I'm holding all their stuff.
And guess what happens? We go home with that.
Yeah, exactly. And then I treat Katie bad, and you know, I treat the kids bad. That's when I got to go hold them and say, okay, I need to get to a meeting. I need to do something like this.
Right.
This is a meeting.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, right now.
And by the way, folks, this is the first one-on-one Hours of Clarity's having too. And any proceeds, donations, there's a PayPal link individually for each episode. We're going to go to the Downtown Mission for this episode, split amongst a recovery home with Brentwood Recovery Home and the Downtown Mission. So if you do feel like click and subscribe, please do so. Share, like, support, do all that stuff. But click that link down below, and don't forget to donate if you have a couple bucks.
I want to try to. I think this is a great thing. I think that we could all, you know, do this. You know, start doing this more and start, you know, blowing this thing up, because I think this could be good for the community, right?
Mostly about a message, and like I appreciate you like actually wanting to take time to volunteer to do stuff like that, because it's hard for me to recruit other people to get their stories. A lot of people don't want to tell their story that's aired or whatever, right? Like they have their own personal reasons, which is respectable, but it's not a me thing, right?
Yeah.
So I don't want to come on here by myself.
No, I know.
And
I think I owe it to the people, because I've been involved in this recovery community for a long time. Father Paul, I love him very much.
Keep pounding out a message.
He started, you know, putting this in my head. Like when I was 16, I met Father Paul. Like we talked about this. He paid off about the big debt for me and everything.
Helped you out in many ways.
And I've been to Brentwood lots of times. He sent for a bus ticket. I called him from Edmonton. I was on the street in Edmonton. I was just a kid, you know, 18.
You can hear more about this on episode 2. You want to go and find that and track back to it, but this is what he's talking about.
But you know, so he said to me when I was about 19, 20, one of the times on program, he sat with me and said, Chris, you're going to be a counselor in this city. And I said, okay, you know, I believed him, you know, because he never treated me wrong before, but he's seen something, right? Mm-hmm. And he said that, and look what happened. I ended up becoming a counselor in the city. So he's seen that a long time ago in me, you know, and you know, and Father Paul is a huge part of my recovery, and Windsor is a recovery city.
And I just want to say that too, like you notice the words he just said, that he's seen that in me, and look what became of me. So a lot of times we're thinking we can do it ourselves is our own demise. It's devices that we're left up to. Our own devices are going to end up in turmoil, destruction, negativity, flat out negativity. Yeah. But somebody else could see something new. So every time I go to somebody in recovery, they give me good advice. And if I follow what they say, chances are my life's not going to go bad, right? Yeah. But thinking I can do it to myself, it's not going to work out. Right, so you just said it right there. A lot of people see something in me, I see something in you, you see something in me, I see something in you, and that's the giving and sharing in recovery. You know, I can take your shit and I can turn it into gold. You can take my shit and I get back gold.
The thing is, too, is Father Paul used to say, and this is the motto of Brentwood for a long time, is ask, listen, and do what you're told.
Right, where people need people.
So it's that simple. Yeah. You know, and then we start to get some changes.
So I want to get back to the response thing. You have that program running in Windsor right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't have an official office where I do it, but I do a lot of this when people don't even know I'm doing it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So if they ask me to do a group over at the Windsor Mission, or Hand in Hand, or another house of this or whatever, I mean, and I do work a small bit for DWCC.
Yeah.
And so on the street, there's a street light place on Why Not now, just specifically for people from the community.
Okay.
Which is cool.
Well, that's on Wyandotte?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I'm there 9 hours a week.
Nice.
And it's a bit. And I'm just really, since September, getting reestablished. I want to come back to this practice word, and that, because this really has a lot to do with response, okay? And it has a lot to do with, I think, ongoingly having some hope in your recovery, because, you know, anyway, so I watched this video, and we'll probably all know Iverson, right?
Oh, Allen Iverson, yeah.
Allen Iverson. So he has a famous YouTube. You can go watch it, where he says
practice like 45 times.
Exactly.
Practice.
For 2 minutes. Practice.
So what I miss practice.
Yeah.
Practice.
So, but there's not a follow-up video that tells you the big picture.
Yeah.
So what happened behind the scenes with that? Let's get to that part.
Okay, first of all, he was like 15 or 16 years old in an adult jail for killing somebody.
Yeah.
He never went the NCAA road. He never became all of a sudden at 18 or 18 and a half.
Here's a bunch of millions of dollars.
And and he was first annulled or whatever, and he was let out of jail, and he's out in a park playing with the boys, right, the guys in the neighborhood, and somehow goes from there to the NBA in a short period.
Georgetown.
Yeah. And here he is, and so, and like Jordan said of him, Jordan was just, I'm so thankful he's not 4 inch taller.
Yeah, no doubt. He's amazing.
Because he would have been me.
Yeah.
He would have been the man.
Yeah.
And I mean, so everybody who has ever watched basketball in that era
knows Allen Iverson.
Knows Allen Iverson.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So anyway, then your press conference, and they're asking him, you know, like,
why'd you miss practice?
You missed practice, and then you lost the next game. He wasn't himself, right?
Yeah.
He wasn't himself, and he was not.
So what happened that day when he missed that practice?
The day before that, one of his homies got smoked and died.
Yeah, so there he is grieving.
He was grieving.
And the public is giving it to him about missing practice.
And he had no ability even to say, I was recovering from my friend dying.
Right.
And then, so...
He just kept repeating, practice, practice.
So when I say to somebody, okay, we're going to practice patience, here's how you can learn how to do that. Patience.
Yeah,
we're talking about patience.
Patience. We're talking an addict.
Yeah, exactly. Let me learn
we're talking about patience.
Let me learn it now.
I'm a gratification. Exactly.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
So teaching and sharing by not being judgmental, that's the way we are.
And it goes to show
alongside and just going, you know, this is what we can do. Let's try this a little bit. Let's go to the end of the line all the time at the grocery store.
And that's what I think what they mean.
Crazy.
I really think they may mean like playing the tape forward. That has a lot to do with like seeing the outcome, understanding what events can transpire if you make the negative choice, right? Or even having the ability to communicate.
Well, you got to listen too.
Right. But he, like he was saying, he couldn't even say it. He couldn't say the words, right?
The thing is, with patience, you think about it, you break it down. It's about you again. And
right.
It's about, I want to get this out. Like, just even sit and listen to a conversation, let the other person talk, and not thinking when they're talking the next thing you're going to say. You know what I mean? That's got a lot to do with it too, right? You know, and it's just and it comes in trying to fix yourself, and all these things take time. You know,
it's humbling.
Like when I first got in recovery, and this time when I really took it seriously and did the things I needed to do, that I knew what to do to fix myself, and because I'd seen it years and years and years, I was just too bullheaded to actually do it. You know, or not serious enough at the time.
Think about what you just said right there. I had to do it. A lot of people can talk about it. You can walk around it. You can dabble in it, but.
And not once.
But the difference is like you can't
just do it
take
once.
shortcuts.
Amen.
You can't take shortcuts.
You do it every day.
And that's the difference.
Yeah.
Shortcuts. Right? So when I was in Brown before, I would wait and I would sleep in a room check.
Yeah.
I would go around and I would sneak around and I'd get an extra hour of sleep. Father Paul told me not to work out. I'd work out. I had a skipping rope in. I was skipping. I was shadow boxing, cockiness. You know, I was cutting corners. I was getting other people to do my jobs.
Well, of course.
Paying them for it. You know what I mean?
Typical addict.
So these things are the things that you can't do. These are the shortcuts. So
responsibility.
Exactly. Thinking that, okay, I'm just not doing drugs now. I'm not drinking. Right? I'm good. So now, but I'm going to do everything else dishonest, and I'm going to do everything else cutting corners, and that's when I relapsed every time.
And that's why they say you got to work on the 90 to 95% of your own character defects and your own personality and your traits as a person. If I had to practice playing hockey for 20 years, I'd be Connor friggin' McDavid. I would, but I practiced being a crackhead, a drug dealer, a fighter. You get really good at messing things up when you practice it for 20 years.
Right.
And like, time is of the essence. I've heard this saying a number of times. And it brings me back to a point I used to hear, times of the essence, like, what do I got to hurry up? It's like, no, you got to be patient.
Yeah.
You got to slow it down. Really stay in the moment, and take your time to accomplish those goals that you're talking about. School, make sure you get your projects done and attend class, so then you don't have to struggle like this 38-year-old to find a job.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? To look for some sort of an income. Like, I know 38-year-old men right now, and I could live in fantasy like this and be like, well, I don't have what they have. But they got their house paid off. They got a couple cars.
What I tell people in my recovery group, it doesn't matter what age you are, but now you can look at this like it's cool, right? Like, now it's a new start. So now you can reinvent yourself. Either you want to reinvent yourself to do, to work whatever job you want to work, right? Like me, I learned that as I'm 33. Now I'm going to reinvent myself and I'm become addictions counselor.
Right. So Jenny Baird just said this at the mic today. She said that Father Paul said, the alcoholic is and an addict is the most blessed person because they get to live two lives. A life that they used to live, and then who they can become.
That's why I'm glad Jenny said that, because I was talking about my guys in group that now it's a chance to redeem yourself, to try to, now you build a whole new life. It's cool. If you look at it like that, it's a cool thing.
It's not.
But now you got to take a step back and not put too much on your plate.
Right.
See, that's where it gets tricky, right?
Right.
Because you see everybody with everything, right? And you lost it, and you didn't have it. You never had it in the first place, or you lost it. So now you're like, where do I start now? Well, I'm an addict. Don't want it all right away.
Right.
But don't work.
I've been sober for a month. I deserve my license.
So what I did was little steps. I did recovery for 8 months, and before I even thought about getting a job, I went and washed dishes at Mezzo's.
Right.
And then I went and put myself back to school. All these things, but not all at once. 1, 2, 3, and I just kept doing it until I got a job at the mission. They paid for my school. I got rid of the job.
Opportunities came because you kept giving yourself sobriety. Every day you chose sobriety.
But I never stopped moving. And that's the thing, right? As soon as people stop moving in recovery, that's when
you get dormant.
Bad things start to happen. That's when you start isolating, and that's when you go back and you fall back into the same patterns, and then you relapse.
And what a big part of my recovery has been other people that pick me up when I least expect it. Like, I noticed you're slipping, or you've been. I had Paul Boucher. Sorry if I mentioned your name and it's going on the internet, buddy, but I don't even know if you watch YouTube. Here's the thing, though. He's a longest standing, oldest alumni here at Brentwood.
Oh, wow.
And I've been a pet project for him, he says, and he's in my group, or I'm in his group, I should say. And he said to me, you need to be coming back more often. He said, you're going to the recovery meetings at the mission. He said, but this is your home. Yeah. He said, so you need to come to Brentwood. And so for the past week, I've been coming back for meetings. And he said to me, so I said something and you listened. I'm seeing you around more. Right? So it's like just hearing that part. It's like somebody can reach out when you're silent for a week. Where you been? How you been? It takes that person to kind of dig down, reach up and grab you out of that hole that you don't even see yourself getting into. Right? How many times somebody been there for you to be able to give it to other people?
Yeah, I think for me this idea we get to step 10, and then step 11 comes and we go, pray, meditation, whatever, and so
that'll be the easy one.
That'll be the easy one. But again, it's not if it's on Sunday.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because Sunday's 168 hours without a habit. So I found that these habits that we can look at as practices, right? Yeah. If you have 4 of them, that's good for a day, right? And so they have to be daily little things that take less than. So I often, with meditation, I ask people to consider just sitting, being quiet, closing your eyes, no noise, turn off your phone, or set your phone. I have a timer that you can get from. There's all kinds of ways you can do this, but I set it for 2 minutes and 40 seconds, 1% of your day. Yeah. And do 1% of your day at night.
Right.
And you start and you realize, there's all distractions and my brain's going like that. Yeah, it is.
No kidding.
Now you're knowing, that's real, eh?
That's the cloud you got to get through.
And so then I asked them for the next 30 days. Try to go to 10 minutes in the morning. Right. And then the next month, go to 10 minutes in the morning and 10 minutes at night. And there's online, I do a group every Wednesday.
Right.
So you're a minister too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you didn't mention that. So how long have you been a minister for?
Went to Bible college in 1988.
Okay.
Wow.
And since 1990.
Don't wow him like he's supposed to be this old guy.
Oh, that's cool.
I'm just kidding.
No, I was 28 years old when I went, and so it was 3.5 years after really in recovery.
Right.
And so I.
What would you find that inspired you to do that?
I wanted to help. I was just fortunate that where I ended up going was where I grew up.
Right.
In Sudbury. And my mother had always gone to that church, and so I went there as a little kid and whatnot. And then, actually, my wife and my 2 youngest children, or my 2 oldest children, were going there, and I wasn't for 7 years or 8 years after the first child was born. So that's how I kind of got in the door to go see the kids in a musical sort of thing. And then it was a big transition for grace, realizing how much God had given me grace, and And the pastor there was this new young guy, completely a person. He's my mentor, but completely a person that he was in a Volkswagen, going down the 401 from Montreal. He didn't even know where he was going. He was hitchhiking, and the guy who picked him up hitchhiking, he was on LSD, and so the guy,
here we go.
The guy told him about Jesus, right? So this is the guy that randomly started at that church.
So the driver was on LSD?
No, my friend.
Oh, okay.
Sorry about messing up the story. Anyway, so what happens is he ends up having this experience, gets on the other side of the highway. The guy tells him about Jesus. It's the whole Jesus story. He's ripped. But he has all of a sudden this clarity to get out of the car, get on the other side of the 401, go back towards Quebec, and tell his family, who never heard about any of this. And so that guy is the guy that God sent into my life,
right,
to be the guy. And so he said, you know what? At the end of church one day, he said to me, "I want you to read this book in the Bible." And I'm like, "Okay." So I read the book in the Bible, and then and he said, "We'll meet and have coffee, right?" And then about 2 weeks into that meet and have coffee thing, he didn't drink coffee for one thing, but anyway, he said, I got to move somebody. You got a truck? I was in wholesale retail fruit and vegetables. Okay. My dad's business, and so I had this truck, and he says, "I got to move somebody." And so honestly, I said, "Okay, I'll help you." That was pretty cool. Pastor moves people. I thought, this guy, not only is he got kindred, he's a drug guy, but he's going to go help somebody in the community, right?
Yeah.
So we go help somebody in the community, and we get there, and this girl's like fully almost due to have a baby, and the place smells like cat pee in the whole bed, and all this stuff, right? It's a horrible situation. And I'm thinking, that even more improved me, like pastors go and do this. And I was thinking,
that's cool, though.
That's pretty cool, right?
It just shows too, like Father Paul used to get the guys rounded up from Brentwood to do moves all the time.
But not only that, if somebody was hurting back then, and it's a different climate back then, but they used to get, alumni used to go to the houses and get them.
Right out of the house or the bar, or
they go to the bar and they get the people.
Hotels, whatever.
That's love, right?
So it turned out that woman. So I was just curious, right? And I was probably 26, and I said to her, "So, like, do you have the child have a baby or have a father around?" Or and she said, "Oh, actually, he's in prison, but he's getting out soon."
Sad.
And I said, "Okay." And she said, "Yeah." And I said, and then she voluntarily told me who it was, because her husband, or not? Yeah, it was her husband. Was from the biker gang in
Quebec.
Yeah.
No, this was in Ottawa, Sudbury.
Sudbury, okay.
So the coffin millers were called back then.
Okay.
Anyway, so and I knew him.
Oh, wow.
He was a neighbor to.
That's crazy.
Yada. So I said, "Jerry," and she said, "Oh yeah." And the next thing you know, here we are, like 2 months later, he gets out of prison. He's at the front of the church.
Right.
He gave his heart to Jesus when he was in prison, and that's why the pastor had a connection
so
to go help her. And I was like, "Wow, this is pretty cool world, right?"
Blows your mind.
Yeah. So I mean, like, he was bartender at my first wedding.
Right. So that's a kind of cool connection too, right? Because like I never had those eye-opening signs hit me until I came into recovery, and then small things happen.
I'll tell you about my first. I talked about on the last podcast some eye openers, right?
Yeah.
Like with God.
Yeah.
And I always believed in God. Like my first experience when I was young. I was about 7 or 8. My grandma died. My meme, I was the only T-bear to keep the name on. So she was an alcoholic. My Pepe was an alcoholic. We looked after my Pepe after my meme died because he had stroke. So they was actually, my dad has 6 siblings, and they wouldn't look after my Pepe. My dad took him in, and we did, right?
Yeah.
They wanted to send him to a nursing home. We never wanted to go, so we did. We took care of him at the house. And my meme died though that night, and she was very close to me. Like my dad was a was an alcoholic, and we had issues, so we would always go to my meme's house, and that side of the family, and my mom's side too, my grandma and grandpa would always take care of us, so we'd be going from here to there, but she was very close to me. So when she passed, she visited me in my dream when I was a kid. Wow. And I went to my mom the morning after, and she kissed me on my hand. I had a heart swelled up on my hand from her visiting me in the dream.
Wow.
And my mom and dad both saw it, and I can vividly, I was a little kid, I remember a bit, but my mom, so that was the first time that God has, been in my life and spoke to me that I remember.
Touched by an angel.
But then then, and my mummy said she loved me and she's going to miss me, but she'll always be there for me. Right? I remember that. So, and so that was a special time. And then after that, when Katie was having a heart attack, so I spoke about this in the last podcast, but we were in my apartment. And it was a crappy apartment, drugs everywhere, but not just my apartment, the whole building was a drug building on Olette. And so her mom didn't visit us for about 8 months at the time, whatever it was. And Katie was having a heart attack. We were mixing a lot of different cocktails of drugs at that point. And I had a fire going on. So there was a fire in my house in one corner. Katie's having a massive heart attack, 2 massive heart attacks in the other corner. Her mom just shows up miraculously,
Wow.
out of nowhere, and takes Katie to the hospital. But after that, shortly after that, the dove.
The doves from jail,
story, right?
yeah.
The doves from jail that I talked to you guys about, and I saw the dove that morning. Katie saw it, and her mom saw it. So shortly after that, when I got out, we got recovery. So God's been a part of my life, and then Father Paul. You got to think about Father Paul because he was brought in my life for a reason, right? And then him saying I'm going to be a counselor. It's all God, right?
It's crazy that you put together a priest put together a program in the 60s, 67 I think it started or whatever, and it's the old hand-in-hand house that they used to have until they got this place in 74 cool. or something like that.
It's cool. Everything comes
full circle. But
see that though?
It's literally this addict with this addict recover. That addict, and it's every day, one-on-ones, right? So everybody splits up in a one-on-one. So it's 2 people, and then you switch, and then it's 2 other people with each other. So it's a constance of having a big group of recovering addicts together. Even if there's failures and successes, it doesn't matter. Put them all on a big ball. There's going to be some successes. But if we just leave them where they are, it's going to be nothing but failure.
I believe that everything happens for a reason. When I was in the midst of my addiction, I've seen a lot of evil stuff too.
Right.
Right? And we all see, if
one can't exist without the other.
If you're in there, you see it. As soon as I got better and I brought God back in my life and everything, that evil stuff was gone.
Right.
So I don't see that now.
Right.
All I see is the good.
That's the same thing with me with the psychosis.
On the outskirts and everything, and I see that it's there, but it's not within me anymore.
100%.
That makes sense,
and listen,
it's not within me anymore.
When they say that when are you going to go on with your life? When are you recovered? And it's like, okay, I still have evil temptations, or I'll have thoughts, and I get in a different track of thinking. But it's easier today to pull myself out of it. Where before it was all day, every day, all the time.
Yeah.
I was so depressed, suicidal, didn't want to live. I just felt like a bag of rocks. I'm not.
That if you do everything, and it talks about that in the literature, God will take away the temptation.
Right.
And that's true, right? This time for me, I don't think I've never thought since I got sober, and I shared with you before about this, man. I this time is different because I never think about. I've never once since I got sober thought about going to use drugs.
Right.
Never once. But I mean, the thoughts of other things are there.
Right.
I can sometimes think back to times.
And that's the thing too. When they ask,
I never once thought.
Did you think about using today? Yeah, it's part of the introductory.
Part of the introduction. Yeah.
For the day.
God has removed that temptation.
Then here's the thing. Yeah, and that's a blessing to behold. You should be grateful for that because you can't do it by yourself. You had to ask for something, right?
Yes.
I think being stuck in that lifestyle and that way of thinking, it provides a multiplication of itself. So all ill-begotten gains, everything goes out the window, right? Exactly. The people in your life, they get hurt. You lose your kids, your supports. You lose loved ones, whether it's to death or just simply them washing their hands of you, right?
Which happens a lot.
It happens a lot. So everything starts coming back. You can't get death back, unfortunately, right? The people that we lose are gone, and God bless.
That's the bottom line nowadays, though.
Right, and that's the rock bottom, right? There is no real rock bottom, like you're saying. People just die because the drugs are so potent. But I think part of my recovery was getting these blessings back and then feeling like a hypocrite after a relapse, or looking at my lifestyle and saying, I got a lot of good going on. I really don't want to wreck it all. You can choose one thing and lose everything, or you can choose to give up that one thing and you get everything back.
There's a lot to lose.
But you got to work for it. Yeah. You got to work for it. Like you said, setting those short-term goals.
For me to use right now, throw gratitude out the window. It's selfish. That would be a selfish act, right? That would be okay, I'm just going to go feel good for a minute while the rest of my family just pretty much just ruined now. Right. And all my life is ruined and everything else is ruined. And
not to mention, you ever thought of this too? When you think about the high of anything, any drug, any alcohol, anything like that, any substance, you get this euphorical moment, right, of some kind.
Yeah.
Serotonins are running high, the dopamine, whatever. Your chemicals are just flying. Yeah, okay, comfort.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah.
But nobody ever thinks about that 2-3 days afterwards.
Yeah.
Okay, right?
You screw yourself because when you're in recovery like this, right? When you're in a good recovery and you're doing well, you screw yourself because when you go back to use, you're always going to feel guilt and shame.
Right. So why is it so easy? Like if we can just sum it up to this, is that there's an evil inside of us. There's something negative. There's something positive. Because before we could read or write, we both, all of us, knew. Right from wrong. You're feeding your mom that cookie. I say this all the time. Or putting your soother, asking for a hug and a kiss, and being the cute little baby or toddler. And when you're breaking your brother or sister's toy. When you're slapping someone. You're running away in your shitty diaper. Or you're stealing a cookie out of the jar and taking off. Like, when you're being devious. You can't speak English.
It's a disease.
Right. So what I'm saying is you're already born with good and bad in you. And that's the free will of it. That's a God giving you that free will, right? So you're making choices based on good and bad before we could even understand literature, before you could speak a language, before you could comprehend right? So our body languages tell a lot of the story or give a lot of the communication.
Honestly, my choices today and the gratitude that I have for the life that I've built, my choices today is I'm going to do other people's will. Just doing mine,
Thanks for summing it up.
Because that's where I messed up.
That's the direction.
My whole life, is just I did what I wanted to do.
Right.
Now it's like, can I get up in the morning and do what Tim wants and help Matt out or
that's
help Katie out and help my kids out? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But don't get it twisted, is that all that can still creep back up. Like, what does Chris want today to be, whether it be clothes or whether it be
Tim,
something else?
you find there's a balance in your lifestyle to continue doing what you're doing?
Yeah, well, I mean, if we're not learning how to nurture ourselves, and that's the word I think that is a good word to say, love ourselves, is that we have to have things in our life that we're nurturing ourselves. Because if we got nothing to give anybody, we got nothing to give our kids, we got nothing to give our spouse, we got nothing. So
spiritually,
and this work, which been a long time. There's times when you just have to really practice the ideas around detachment and boundaries and things like that, because that's.
These are all things that come to you throughout time.
My brains are coming the wrong directions. I'm not gonna. This is not gonna work. But I think the word that I've kind of looked at it is so. I'm fully. In my idea of life with addiction, that you relapse a long time before you reuse.
100%.
And so I added a word called reset. So when I realized, let's just reset. Let's put that between those.
So if you're not in recovery, you're in a relapse way of thinking, so you can reset yourself before the actual substance.
Let's get there first.
Right.
Let's get to that button on the phone. Instead of I say when we used to have how many people were throwing phones against the wall and because they didn't work. And all they had to do was turn them off and turn them on. But they didn't know, right? They would reset. And so that's what I really worked on in my own life. And the idea of, for people that are in recovery, that understand, it doesn't matter how long. It doesn't matter how long. You just become, you're sick. Your ongoing healing. And I mean, people like the React guy, and I use response and he uses react because it's an acronym, right? So it's not, but our first reaction, if it's not response, it's usually a bad thing.
Right, 100%.
Okay, and so then we feel the opposite. Cortisol comes, not a positive dopamine, and then we're stressed out. I'm still a loser. I'm still we started this self-talk.
That self-manifestation.
I can't get this. It's too hard.
And so it's okay, so now I'm in give up mode. I'm still not reusing.
Exactly.
I'm still not seeing myself as relapsed, but I need a reset.
But hit that reset, change the way you think.
I say to people, that's a good point you brought up, because this has been going on in the group for a while too, and every group that I ever have, it's I want to get to people before they get into that tunnel. Before they get into that,
catch them while the window's open.
Because then, when they get into the full relapse mode,
there's no stopping, man. You can say 1,000 things.
It's too late. I grab them and shake them and say, "Hey, it don't matter." And their kids,
the choice is made.
Their mom, their wives, it doesn't matter. They're on the.
I've literally watched my friends tell their wives and kids "fuck right off," and they walk out the door.
That's what it is.
I've done it. So
me too. And
then you shame and guilt and all that other crap
follow
comes. And and I'll tell you one thing. Okay, from the theological point of view, I think Paul was here. He'd say it a different way, but God does not give us guilt and shame. That is not His plan.
No.
He gives us grace,
Yes, He
and
does.
He gives us words of life. So I have right on the back of that, I'm going to say this from Seinfeld. George, he had this expression: "Hey, it's not a lie if you believe it."
Oh my goodness!
What happens in our self-talk and our unconscious, even as an addict, is it's always this like, you haven't changed.
Yeah.
You haven't changed.
beat yourself up
You haven't
mentality.
changed. And it's like, okay, so, you know, you go to an event and somebody gets attention and you didn't get attention, and blah, 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 or whatever.
Jealousy, envy, all those things.
All those,
that's not God.
7 deadly sins,
Right.
you know. You're on that path because you believe that you've been slighted.
Right.
You believe that you've been, you know, and so what happens is a word that we don't talk a lot about in recovery, but your ego is very fragile.
Oh, big time.
Right.
And so men, especially, but I can't speak for being a woman, obviously, but men are very, very, very insecure in this area when saying they're weak.
Right.
And unless
you got to be macho, men don't cry, all that stuff. Don't be a snitch, all the things.
It's ingrained in you, right?
Yeah,
so you keep going back.
Well, I mean, it's also the street. It's also the culture out there.
But here's the thing, okay? So I spent years believing in other people's, projections of what should be, right? So like, I gotta live this way. I gotta be tough. I gotta be this. I gotta be, and it's all facade. It's all a facade, man. Like ultimately, I am what I'm alternating through my feelings on a daily basis. I'm not even mad. That was a name given to me by some other human being.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, so who am I as a human being? Well, I'm in a physical form, so that's my human. What am I being in a day is going to fluctuate my alternating feelings. So if I'm being negative, I'm going to product and multiply more negative. If I'm being positive, even if I am negative, trying to get out of that reset headspace, change the way of thinking, go a new direction, what am I going to ultimately become? There's only one way out. Positive.
I'm going to start what I do all the time is just treat everybody with love and respect. So that's the way I get through all that.
Then you get your spiritual cup filled.
That's the way I get through all that is to treat everybody with love and respect. Even the people that are rude to me, and if that's just they're having a bad day. Everybody that I look at, I think like, what are they going through today? Like
in a way,
making them, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be making them a certain way. It's just that I have to love them no matter what.
Right.
Like even the girl that hurt my kid, like I gotta.
Well, what does that say?
Everybody that I can't harbor resentments. I can't harbor hate.
Right.
I can't let these things because then I can't treat you the way I want to treat you.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like I had to let go of all those things that happened before.
And it's a difficult process, like to go through.
It's healing.
Yeah, and forgiveness is a if the opposite of forgiveness can bind your soul forever, it could literally torture, like it did for me mentally, spiritually. It crippled me.
Well, yeah.
I didn't even know how to live.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
because you're always stuck in that, right?
Always stuck in the past, always hating on something. Yeah. Where there is hate, there is no love, right? Mm-hmm. And what does it say? 365 times in the Bible, do not fear, right? Yeah. And it's not to make like this episode about being like religious but spiritual.
Well, it's okay if we are, because it's what we believe
it's to be mentioned, and it's fine. It's fine. And what I'm saying is that spirituality and religion are two different things. Mm-hmm. To be a spiritually full person, you don't ever have to walk into a church or know Jesus Christ existed. You can be in touch with your spiritual self. However that works is if you're making good choices for other people.
The thing is, nowadays everybody's too afraid to talk about what they believe
that too.
And I don't believe that, because if you believe in
God's
what
great.
you believe in, then that's fine to me. It doesn't matter. Whatever you believe in is fine to me. If I believe in God and you believe in something different, that's fine.
That's right.
But I'm not going to shy away from talking about the fact that I believe in God.
100%.
Get through.
I was just trying to put it out there that there's got to be
I get it,
like how Father Paul was a priest and never brought the Bible into program.
But he did talk about God and religion.
He
didn't bring the Bible in.
Right. So what I'm saying is there's no reading, the point I'm trying to get at is the spiritual connection is in and through other people.
Yes.
You have the 12. You have the big blue book, right?
Yeah.
Well, no. Okay. So the program is based around around the same concept of the 12 steps.
Yeah.
Right.
And Father Paul worked his magic by just what we're talking about today is helping people out. He kept himself going for years and years and years and lived on.
Mm-hmm.
When he was in the penthouse, because he just kept helping people every day, right? Like I don't know how many times I sat in Father's office, and you would sit in there and you would have talks with him, and there'd be 6-10 other people in the office sometimes.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? And you would have to say what you wanted to say right in front of everybody else. There was no going the other. Let me have you in here.
Right. That provides a vulnerability, right?
My confession, was right in front of everybody else, because that's my brothers and sisters, and that's who. And if you didn't like it, then that
it's kind of like a big confession booth.
It was.
Right?
It was. I remember one time my cousin was in there one time, and I love him dearly, we're like brothers, but he was in there one time and he was in front of me, and we'd always go together, sometimes because we hung out, and I was doing really good at the time, and Kyle wasn't doing so good. So he was sitting in there, and he said, I need money. He brought up this big story to Father Paul about needing cash for rent and stuff like that. I knew it was a lie. Mm-hmm. So I said to Father, after he got out of his office, I said, Father, you know that he's not telling you the truth about this, right? And he pats me on the back and says, "Listen, I know, Chris. I gave him the money anyway.
Yeah.
Because I love him."
That's
I
it.
said, "Okay." And that made me realize, that small thing there made me
Grace.
realize it's like,
Yeah.
how much he cares about people,
Naturally.
and how much I should care about.
Naturally, too.
Yeah,
Naturally.
And how much I care.
Man, I'm telling you, as I hear you talk, these things don't come easy to me. They don't. I still have my resentments. I still have my judgments with certain things, right? I have a hard time. It's easier today than it was 2.5 years ago, right? Mind you, but I imagine what it could be like for me with peace in my life, even more so if this is what I've already received. If I already received this much peace, right? You see what I'm getting at?
Exactly.
It's the part,
And you got a lot of-
grateful
man,
thinking.
You have a lot of potential, man. You have a lot of potential. You're a very charismatic, smart guy. You got a big heart. You gotta
You're
use
making
that,
me blush.
Well, it's true. And you got to use that, because sometimes we get caught up in all this other bullshit that's going on in life, and we don't realize the gifts that we have, Or we take it for granted, you know what I mean?
The main thing I was trying to say is that the good things grow just like the bad things, right? I can have multiplications of negativity from making negative choices and be stuck in that same whirlwind and turmoil that I was in before while I was using or living that way. But even today, I can see the multiplications of positive.
Exactly.
The blessings that I've been given.
But we can go too far on that too.
Well, right, 100%. That's why you start talking about balance.
Yeah.
Setting those goals, hitting the reset button.
Here's okay. Everything grows in manure.
Okay, this is that one story. Remember? I don't know if you ever heard this.
Manure.
You take two people, you put them in a room filled with manure, filled with shit, right? Horse shit.
Yeah.
And one person's in the one room, right? And they're monitoring. There's people in the middle. They're monitoring, right? Watching through, say a double-sided mirror or whatever. And the one person's like, "Oh man, this is disgusting." Like, doesn't want to touch the manure, just standing in the corner, pissed right off. Like, "What am I? Let me out of here!" Freaking out. And the other person is just rummaging through the manure, ripping through it, just having a great old time, ripping through the manure. So they go in and they go, "Buddy, what are you doing?" He says, "Well, I figured you put me in this room full of shit, horse shit.
Yeah.
There must be a pony in here somewhere."
Yeah.
Right.
And it. So
Yeah,
I mean,
Like, you know what I mean?
fruit. I mean, we're in Leamington. We're down here. This is all agriculture at one point, pretty much.
Big time.
And anyway, stuff grows.
Right.
If you don't have any difficulties,
Right.
you don't have any challenges, you don't have any tests in your life, you're just going to become so myopic
Right.
that you like, I got the wheel.
Right.
I'm going to plan my next 60 years and this and that, and then a tragedy happens,
Right.
or
Right.
you lose your job, or
Things don't go the way you
they
plan.
don't go the way.
Yeah.
I'm not getting to write this book the way I thought it'd be.
Right.
Right.
And that's the
so-
part of control that we really got to let go of.
Well, and as we say, okay, what do I have to learn in this?
Mm-hmm.
And then we have gratitude. Let's talk about gratitude today. A great deal, because I put a line on a piece of paper and I tell a lot of people, say plus minuses in any situation.
True.
Plus minuses. So how can I...
Pros and cons.
Because right now my only thing I'm looking at is all the minuses, right?
Yep.
And I'm like, okay, so I do that little bit of a work. Then I respond to it instead of saying, "That's it, I've had it. I'm
And as
going to go do this. I'm
an
going to do that."
ex-addict, I think that's our natural response is to look at the negatives, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
So-
And we live in a world full of distractions too nowadays,
Well, and they put it this way too. Yesterday's gone, right? And tomorrow's not even a promise. You know. So if I can't live in tomorrow or yesterday, and today's the only time that I have to stay in my moment, it's a gift, and that's why they call it the present.
Exactly. And it's about catching ourselves before we start dating ourselves deep,
That reset.
Go buy a new phone. Just press
Reset.
Reset, yeah, and it's like, it's an everyday thing, So I miss like if I'm gonna open up my own recovery center one day, then I got to have you guys help me.
That's
I
it.
have to have everybody help me.
You need
I
people-
can't just go do it alone. It's not gonna work.
Right.
So that's how we all got to do it. We got to work together.
Totally.
It's like we're doing this podcast for people instead of one. Maybe it was just you talking all day.
Man, embarrassing. Yeah.
Couldn't
you imagine?
This is the first time I've ever been in this building.
I could do it
Yeah.
though, don't you think?
Yeah, you could. You're amazing.
But this place is, you probably know this, pretty famous in Canada.
Oh yeah.
It is big time.
Brentwood?
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah,
In Ottawa,
100%.
Everybody knows about this place who's in the recovery world.
They know about it
Not
on the
addict
East Coast. They
much.
know about it on the West Coast.
Oh yeah, definitely.
No, I had people walk into Ottawa Mission and
It's like a different
I just
feeling.
came from Brentwood.
It's a
I'm
different
like, why did you
feeling.
leave?
Right, right.
Like
Yeah,
you were in the Cadillac, and
Yeah.
so you're coming here and you're going to be in the Volkswagen, right?
And that's the thing too, right?
Yeah.
You look at it this way.
because you got to hit long history. You got a lot of professional people working here now.
yeah.
We
Which
talked
need
about
that too.
we talked about epiphanies, and it didn't just dawn on me until right now. Where like I had a friend, Brent Adams, that passed away. He was hit by a truck, right? Yeah, he left my house or whatever, and about an hour later, he'd been in a car.
Oh, he told me about that.
Yeah, and then I guess he was walking back to my place. I don't even know the story, correct or incorrect.
Yeah.
But anyway, he was hit by a truck coming back towards my direction, right? And anyways, I had these weird things happen while I was in psychosis in the hospital, coming off of drugs and whatnot. And I had heard his voice from a distance, right? And he had said to me that my life has no meaning, I mean nothing, and that I'm dead to him, right? And then drifted away. So the point of this is that I applied for 5 different treatment centers. Okay, so I did one 30-day program in Elliott Lake, and then I was waiting for 4 long-term residentials to reply. So I waited almost 4 months. I think it was just over or just under 4 months to get to Brentwood after I graduated. So in total, it was about 5.5 months because I did 30 days there, right? It's Brentwood.
Yep.
So Brent would want me to be sober. Brent would want me to be a good father. Brent would want me to be, Brentwood.
Yeah.
So, like, if my friend that passed away, what would he want me to be, aspiring to be? Right? And then I walk in the doors. I see Keith. He's a group leader. I'd met him, I think, 14 or 16 years ago in Fort McMurray at an AA meeting where I was trying to look for. I was looking for some pity, though. Like, I lost my family because I didn't change nothing, but at the time I had met him.
At least you're looking for help.
Right. I don't even know if I was at that point. But the point was I ended up going to a place that I thought could fix it.
Yeah, of course.
Right. So I met him, and then there was a few other things. Like, those small signs, but I would never see them without the clarity of being sober today for an opportunity tomorrow. Yeah, it's a blessing. And I just wanted to thank you guys for coming on.
Yeah, brother, anytime. We can do this again. We should do this again. We can make this a thing.
We will. Now that you've
There's
offered.
no reason why not to make it a monthly thing, because there's a lot of things to talk about. Right?
It's been, and by the way, I don't know if anybody is going to watch right up to this point in the episode, but this is the 12th month of Hours of Clarity, and there's
good.
11 episodes.
I like that, brother.
Yeah, so we got a year.
I like that.
And it's a Christmas thing too, so happy holidays, folks. I just wanted to say
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Yeah, Merry Christmas. And if there's anything,
and really, I think this would be good. I really want to do this monthly. If you guys,
I got another question. Is there anything going on? Is there like a Christmas donation dinner or anything like that going on at the mission?
We do have a Christmas dinner at the mission Friday.
So
Friday's a Christmas dinner at the mission.
That's December 20th.
Yeah, we'll have all.
Okay, so
all
anybody that is watching, hopefully that will get down to the mission for dinner, or we can bring any donations for the food there. They're taking donations on a regular basis. I know that the business hours, they just leave them at the front desk for clothing.
Yeah, leave them at the front at the reception. Receptionist going there. There'll be people to help.
Right, and after hours, if you have clothing or food donations, you can bring them to the back door. I know that.
Back door, and just go into reception and leave it there. Leave it with one security guard there.
Yeah, one of the support workers.
So Christmas is always a hard time for our guys. Sometimes others worse than others, So some people worse than others. I mean, so we always want to be there to try to connect with, and help them. So if anybody's around, feel free to stop in and talk to the guys on program. Because that's the hardest one when you're on program. I remember being on program in Brentwood at Christmas, and it was tough, man. I left a couple times around New Year's, right?
Yeah, and you know what? That's the thing. It's one of the toughest times for anybody that's been through the addiction, and they talk about it a lot here because it's a lonely time if you've caused damage in your life. But you don't have to be alone. You don't have to suffer alone. So again, like I said, please reach out. If you feel like donating, donate. That would be a godsend, and I appreciate you. Thank you very much. This concludes this episode of Hours of Clarity. I just wanted to thank both of you for coming on.
Thanks, man. We love you, brother.
Thank you, man.
Love you, brother. Thank you.
And happy holidays, Sean.
Happy holidays, everybody. Thank you.